Welcome to the Kernstown battlefield. How many people have been here for the first time today? Excellent. You're going to enjoy yourself. You guys tell them how good it is.
Good.
I'm Larry Turner. I'm the vice president of the association. Chuck Maurer. Raise your hand. Chuck, going in. Chuck's in charge of the group today. He'll answer any admin questions you have. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Gary Ecelbarger. What are you waving your hands for?
Got some admin notes real quick, 3 minutes.
You can, I'll bring you up here.
I won't start.
Okay. We'll do some admin.
Real quick.
He'll introduce Gary. Thank you for coming.
So I'll point out my KBA volunteers, put up your hand. Get any problems, gonna make comments in the tour, talk or anything about the battlefield, that's who you want to talk to. At the end of the day, please turn in your map packets if you would. If you want to keep them, but if not, we'll take them back. And we're burning up printers. Okay, real quick. So the tour plan, this morning we're going to start here with Gary's introduction and the strategic situation. We're going to go up to Pritchard's Hill. And I'm not going to tell you what's going on. We're going to go up there. We're going to come back down. We're going to go out into the South Fields. I will tell you right now, the South Field's a little wet. If you got regular tennis shoes, you will end up with a little wet feet and a little muddy. And watch out for the landmines. That was an active cow pasture just a couple days ago. All right, then we're going to take a break for lunch, whatever time. We'll announce it here. 1 hour for lunch, and then we're going to reconvene about 50 minutes here, or you can just meet us over at Rose Hill Park. Google it, Rose Hill Park. What, 5 miles that way? Maybe not. Well, on the other side of that ridge over there.
The parking lot's huge.
Yeah, parking's not a problem over there, but I would like, if you can, carpool a little bit. It'll help us, because when we go to our Sandy Ridge property, parking's a little tighter. But just so if you can, it'd be good for us. Let's see, real quick. Anybody with mobility challenges, we can take care of that a little bit this morning, but not at Rose Hill Park. So it's about a mile walk total at Rose Hill Park on a nice trail. Just want to give people a heads up. Restrooms here, restrooms over Rose Hill Park. The gift shop, visitor center, bookstore will be open during lunch, and it'll be open after the tour for a little bit. Anybody wants to buy our best-selling book? Any questions? Gary, thanks for showing up. How many times has this been?
I don't know.
You
It's
lost
like
count?
22, 23. I think I've done it since, all but one time since 2000 or 2001.
So almost this time we were formed, but we acquired the property. He's been here almost every March.
Yeah.
And this is the best weather we've had, maybe? Close?
Close to it, yeah, it is.
That's enough.
It is, close to the battle date. All right, folks, I guess I'm a little dismayed that a lot of you have already been on this. I can't change the story that much for you, so hopefully you forgot everything. All right, so we can go through it again. How many of you know if you had any ancestors in this particular battle, the First Battle of Kernstown? We have a few. Do you know what unit? Do you know?
I believe, was it the 3rd West Virginia? Or it was one of the West Virginia regiments that fought.
Well, there was only one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking 2nd Kernstown.
You're thinking 2nd,
Never
okay.
mind.
There was one in the 1st, but only one.
Yeah.
Mine would be 21st Virginia.
21st Virginia. Oh, you're coming this afternoon, right?
I'll be here.
Okay.
Till sunsets.
Okay, because of course they're active. What company was he in?
Company C, Oliver's Graves.
Okay, all right. We'll
Baltimore Company left. I think.
The Baltimore Company?
The Company B.
The Baltimore Company's here.
Oh, they're here? Okay.
Yeah, they're still here.
They hadn't left yet.
No, they had not left yet. Anybody else had an ancestor? Well, catch me if you did. I'm going to try to point out. What regiment? Anybody else?
Gary, right here.
Okay, what regiment?
42nd Virginia.
42nd. Okay. Yeah, we'll bring them up toward the end. They're kind of in reserve until the end. We'll bring them in. All right, folks. This let's talk about the distinctions of this particular battle. If you compare this battle to other battles in the Civil War, the behemoths like Antietam, Gettysburg, or the Wilderness, it's small in comparison. But if you talk to the soldiers, they will talk proudly about how the fire to the extent of the line was as heavy as it was, and I quote, at Antietam, Gettysburg, or the Wilderness. That's from a soldier that was in all three battles. And another in the Stonewall Brigade that was in a lot of battles said it was the hardest fought battle of the war. So we're going to get a better appreciation of that. But for its time that it's fought on March 23rd, 1862, the first Sunday of spring, it is the largest battle fought east of the Alleghenies for 9 full months of the war. So from the First Battle of Manassas, July 21st, 1861, to the Battle of Williamsburg, which is on May 5th. This is the big battle. It's bigger than Ball's Bluff, and bigger than other Drainsville, other skirmishes, and other battle sites. There's 1,000 killed and wounded in this battle. 2 to 1 wounded to killed. There's another 250 plus that are captured. So the total casualties are going to number about 1,300. For the number of troops engaged, it's a pretty heavy fight. What's another distinction of the battle? Well, at least we don't have to relive it today like we do most of the time. I think it was the coldest battle of the Civil War, or at least one of them. It was colder than Fredericksburg, which we always think about as a winter battle. The temperature in the morning here was 35 degrees. By the time the battle started, it might have hit 40, and it probably never exceeded 48 degrees or so. Now it's already in the mid-50s, so at least we've cleared that one. It is Stonewall Jackson's first and only defeat as an independent commander on the battlefield. And he wore a blue uniform that day, so maybe that was working against him. Let's see, what else can I say about it? It also is the first battle fought in the Shenandoah Valley, so it's going to get a lot of attention. All right, and so because of that, it's a well-documented battle, which was really helpful to me, especially when I compared it to trying to get accounts for later things that I would write about. I always still go back to Kernstown because it's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel to come up with new accounts about it. My book was published almost 30 years ago. I still look for Kernstown sources just to keep compiling them. It means I need to get a life, but it's still fun. Because I wrote that prior to the internet, so life is a lot easier with the internet. It's a well-documented battle in terms of the accounts that are given. Both governments investigated this battle. Even the Joint Committee on the Conduct of the War, the Union side investigated this Union victory. So I'll tell you the reason for that later. It was well mapped right after the battle. Jedediah Hotchkiss, Stonewall Jackson's map maker, who was not present this day, he's going to be hired a couple days after this, further up the valley, further south. But after the Maryland campaign, when Jackson's corps comes back into this Shenandoah Valley and encamps around Winchester, Jedediah Hotchkiss, Stonewall Jackson's mapmaker, will spend 2 nights in that house, built in 1854, and he will spend 4 days mapping this battlefield. You can all see those sketches that he made from the comforts of your own computers by looking it up under the Library of Congress American Memory site. The Hotchkiss sketchbook now is online. It was photographed in the 1880s. It was photographed again by a Montgomery County, Ohio soldier who came with a photographer in the 1890s. So we have pretty good visual documentation, not too far removed from the battle. And it was always mentioned for over 50 years by returning veterans who would make their special pilgrimages to see where they and their company and regiment had fought and fell. So very important to the soldiers. I hope to give an appreciation for that when I explain why. So what I'm going to do right here is just set up the scene, and then we're going to go right into the battle. I'll try to be brief about this. But since we're talking about March of 1862, the war isn't even a year old, so it makes it a lot easier to appreciate what isn't and what isn't going on here. Stonewall Jackson has just been made promoted to Major General and is placed in charge of the Valley District late in 1861 for his stellar performance on Henry House Hill. The brigade of 5 regiments that was with him became known as the Stonewall Brigade when he earned the nom de guerre of Stonewall himself for Manassas. So it's a well-known, famous nickname worldwide. Although in the North, it didn't quite catch on. I'll give you an example. After this battle, an Indiana soldier would say, "We just caught some famous members of the Stone Fence Brigade." So they don't quite get it, right? So he's here throughout the winter of 1861-1862. There is an abrupted winter campaign, which for Jackson was marred by backbiting subordinates, inclement weather, hapless militia. He starts out the campaign on January 1st with 10,000 troops, if you count militia, as well as the Confederate soldiers themselves. By the time Jackson is whittling into March, his force is whittled away. It's now under 5,000 total troops. And his base of operation had been in Winchester, and he's forced to evacuate the town on the night of March 11th, morning of March 12th. He'll pull back through Winchester. All of the remaining troops will go with him. They will head southward up the valley, as we say. I'll explain that on the hill. And they will end up 40 miles south at, I guess appropriately, Mount Jackson, okay, where the terminus of the Manassas Gap Railroad ended. And Jackson will be prodded by his direct superior officer, who's Joseph Edwin Johnson. And he tells Jackson that he needs to close the gap that exists between him and the new occupying Union force, which I'm going to bring up more on the hill, because they have taken over from that day, right? And so Jackson will start moving back northward. Now, his mission that's spelled out in that dispatch from Joseph Johnson says, "Get as close as prudence will permit." Johnson will explain that later to say, "I wanted him to get as close, but not too close so that he would be compelled to fight," because he knows that he's under strength. All right, so on paper, Jackson's now starting to go under 4,000 officers and men. There's a furlough act, a conscription act, a bounty and furlough act. Those are all being enacted at this stage, but no new troops are coming in yet. So Jackson's got pretty much a skeleton force that's moving its way back northward. He does have eyes in the valley. He has a lot of citizen spies in this area that start feeding him a network of information about the Union force that's here. And when I say here, I really mean about 4 miles north of here. Kernstown is its own separate entity at the time. This would have been no man's land. We'll talk what you can see more when we get on the hill. I'll point out the structures that were actually here at the time of the battle, but you'll see some of them. The house was here. A barn was pretty close to here. Around the corner, we'll see it again. You'll see another building that used to be called the wheelwright shop. It probably wasn't. And there might have been a tenant house that might still be standing down there. None of these farm properties existed at the time. They would be later in the war. And none of these structures here were there at the time of the battle either. We know that from the Hotchkiss sketchbook. A lot of cabins, little cabins on the property too, which I haven't quite figured out. You put some names with them. So Jackson's moving his way north. His eyes are giving him the information. His eyes of the army is his cavalry, and that is led by recently promoted Colonel Turner Ashby. He was lieutenant colonel, gets promoted on February 12th, and he is in charge of the 7th Virginia Cavalry, which will eventually grow to about 26 companies. It'll be a big unit, very unwieldy. At this time, he's maybe can field about 300 officers and men in that body of horse soldiers. He will be periodically sending his men into Winchester, even though it's occupied by Union troops. They're disguised as farmers selling eggs. And they're going to learn from the locals what's going on from the Union end, and I'm going to bring them up in a minute. And then they will feed that information back to Jackson as he's starting to work his way north. Now, let's bring up what's going on in the town of Winchester. The occupants of Winchester, beginning on March 12th, on a day that goes to 75 degrees, that'll be closer to this afternoon, I suppose, is the 5th Corps of the Army of the Potomac. All right. Now, some of you that know the war pretty well, and you're thinking 5th Corps, that would be Fitz-John Porter in the Peninsula, but no, that gets renamed for him later. In March of '62, the Army of the 5th Corps of the Army of the Potomac is led by Nathaniel Prentice Banks from Massachusetts, former Speaker of the House, definitely a political general, and he's got 2 divisions under him, and his total force on paper probably would number 20,000 men, but when you're the new occupants of the northern or lower Shenandoah Valley, you have to disperse regiments to occupy places like Bath, which is now Berkeley Springs, and Paw Paw, and Berryville, and even have a provost set up in Winchester. So you have a lot of detached units covering various spots. At the same time, Banks has learned from Abraham Lincoln that he wants to have a covering force, Lincoln that is, to provide extra protection around Washington, D.C., so that George Brinton McClellan can embark upon his Peninsula campaign, which begins out of Alexandria with that huge armada of ships heading south toward the Peninsula or Richmond, working their way toward Richmond, but that begins on March 17th. So to provide the covering force, Banks is going to send one of his divisions out of the valley. He has 2 divisions. The division he sends out was the division formerly commanded by him before he took over the Corps. It is under the command of Alpheus S. Williams. That would leave 1 division left, the division of James Shields. And I'll talk more about Shields on the Hill. That's the division that had the forces dispersed all over the lower valley. So Shields, compared to his paper strength, is rather understrength. For the battle, he probably can field about 6,000 infantrymen and a total force, including artillery and cavalry, maybe closer to 7,000, when on paper he would, sometimes you read these old sources and you say Shields had 10 or 12,000 men here. He clearly didn't. He's going to outnumber Jackson, but he doesn't have that many men. Most of his troops are encamped north of Winchester. The problem is it's out of sight of the citizens. It's out of sight of Ashby and his spies, those farmers selling eggs, and they think that the entire Union force is evacuating Winchester except for a token force of just a few regiments that are hanging out around the town, really in the southern part of town where the Ford dealership is today, just north of where Burger King is. That's kind of the high ground around Abraham's Creek. And they know that there's a tiny Union force there, and that's what Ashby has learned. He will send a message southward to Jackson, giving him that information. So Jackson, while he's moving his way northward, is learning about all this. Then Ashby is going to move up with his horse soldiers. He will move up from where we are on what is now Route 11, that's the Valley Turnpike. He will proceed almost 2.5–3 miles to where Burger King is. That's where the Hillman Toll Gate is. And at the intersection of that road and the Cedar Creek Grade Road, still called that today, he will unlimber his 3 guns. And he will start firing toward Potato Hill, which is where the Union troops are bowling about. And that's going to cause an instant reaction. James Shields, the commander of this division, and I'll talk more about him on the Hill, he will proceed from his headquarters. He will move to that position. He'll start moving an artillery piece himself when one of those artillery rounds from the Confederate artillery hits him above the left elbow, breaks his arm. The same round had actually exploded on the head of one of the artillery horses, so it's a shell fragment that breaks his arm. That same round killed one of the artillerists, Jacob Yeager, who's actually the first casualty, even though this is the day before. This is Saturday, March 22nd. There's a brief skirmish that takes place. The wounded Brigadier General Shields is taken back to Winchester. His second in command will come down, and I'll talk about him on the Hill. He'll align more artillery, drive Ashby away. Ashby's only loss will be 1 captured soldier His name is John Kitchen, Company A. I'll talk about him on the hill. I'm saving a lot for that hill, but I'll get it all in. All right, so Ashby's driven away. Ashby probably should have determined, hey, there's a lot of artillery. He didn't see a lot of infantry, but usually you don't leave a lot of artillery unless there's a lot of infantry around, all right? He didn't quite get that message to Jackson. He said he didn't see anything more that convinced him that there was more than that token force. Jackson, by this time now, has proceeded with the rest of his force near Cedar Creek, near Hupp's Hill, Strasburg. Jackson will probably take his headquarters at the Hupp House, which still stands at the base of Hupp Hill. And Ashby says, if you send me some infantry, I will take over the town overnight, all right? Jackson's mission, when Johnson said get as close as prudence will permit, Johnson wanted him to show his face in the region to prevent Union troops from leaving the valley. So Jackson isn't supposed to attack. He's supposed to basically be a decoy out here and prevent troops from leaving. But Ashby now has told Jackson that Winchester's pretty much evacuated. So Jackson's thinking in the morning that he might have to help drive away that token force, and then he can reoccupy Winchester for the time being as his base of operations, and that's how it's going to proceed from there. All right? So he'll wait the next morning. He'll align his division on the Valley Pike near Strasburg, near Hupp's Hill, and thankfully, unlike today, it was only 35 degrees in Cumberland at 7 in the morning and 37 degrees in Georgetown. So I think it's pretty darn cold, just above freezing. So you can imagine all these little miniature exhalations of clouds going in the air as the soldiers are lined up. And at 10 to 7 in the morning, Jackson will write to Joseph Johnson, with the blessing of an ever-kind Providence, I hope to be in the vicinity of Winchester this evening. Obviously, it's not that far of a distance that it takes that long to march, but he thinks he might have to have a little small engagement to drive the force out. He is unaware that the entire Union division of Shields is still north of town, well outnumbers the force that Jackson has, which is now under 4,000 officers and men, and that's going to lead to this clash that we're going to talk about through the day of this battle. So at 7 o'clock, those Confederates from south of us begin to march northward toward Winchester. Now keep in mind the date. It is now Sunday, March 23rd, 1862. On the same date, in 1775, Patrick Henry stood up in St. John's Church and made that famous speech where he passionately declared to the Virginia Convention that long speech that ended with, "I know not what course the others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." Jackson and essentially his all Virginia division doesn't know it at the time, but they're about to play out the theme of Patrick Henry's speech exactly 7 years later. So we're going to pick it up with them approaching, but we're going to talk about the Union troops on the hill. Any questions about what I just covered? Yep, we have plenty of time for it. Yes?
Do you have any estimate of what Jackson thought he was assaulting in terms of Union numbers compared to that 2 to 3 disadvantage that he actually went up against?
Well, but I'm gonna bring you to speed when he gets to the field. At the time he's leaving Strasburg, he only thinks there might be maybe the token force, a handful of regiments, is kind of the word he's been getting. And all this information comes from a court-martial trial where Jackson's on the stand and says that he was not only he was deceived by Ashby about the numbers, but it wasn't just Ashby. All the citizen spies have told him the same thing. So he has no idea. He just thinks there's maybe one brigade. All right. So when he's leaving Strasburg, he thinks he outnumbers his opponents. All right. So that's why he doesn't think it's going to be much of a battle. All right. By the way, I should add this. This is not published. I put it in my book, the line, but it comes from a telegraph in Robert E. Lee's telegraph book. Now, at this time, Robert E. Lee is essentially he's got a high job title where he has the same job title as he does in 1865, where he is the general-in-chief of all Confederate forces, but he's really just Jefferson Davis's military advisor. So the message that goes to Joe Johnson is, can you, by a rapid forward movement, frighten Washington and thus recall the enemy? So in other words, he wants to use, he doesn't name who he wants the rapid forward movement to be, but you could pretty much say the only person that could be accomplishing that extended out here in the valley would be Stonewall Jackson. So it's kind of interesting that that note came out. I think, even though that's in Robert E. Lee's telegraph book, it's probably Jefferson Davis's mindset that he has to sell everybody else on a month later. So Jefferson Davis is thinking aggressively and offensively. Joseph Eggleston Johnson saying, he already knows Jackson's under strength and doesn't want that to happen. So a little bit of a paradox going on in the Confederate War Department. All right, any other questions about?
Could you paint us a really quick picture? This is a good vantage point. What Sandy Ridge may have looked like and what the elevations are.
We'll do that on the hill.
Sandy Ridge, what's higher, the Sandy Ridge heights?
You'll see it when you're on the hill. Yeah.
Hill.
Yeah. How come Gary kept saying, wait till we're on the hill? You'll see why. You'll see why.
How was Jackson communicating with Johnson? Telegraph, messenger?
It's going to be, Johnson for some reason never liked the telegraph system. But the telegraph, if you send it from now Johnson's not in Richmond yet. Right. He's in Gordonsville, near Orange and Gordonsville. So he's sending everything by horse courier, and he will even when he gets to Richmond. But when telegraphs are sent, like the Robert E. Lee one that I just talked about, when they get to the valley, that one didn't go to the valley, but when they get to the valley, they have to go along the Virginia Central Railroad for 138 miles to Stanton, and then from Stanton to here, it's 86 miles. Right? So you could get an instantaneous delivery of the telegram, but to get it taken from Stanton further northward, you got to take it by horse courier. So there's no advantage, no huge advantage. If you think of it as a triangle, you have it's almost like a right angle triangle in your hypotenuse. So, do your Pythagorean theorem, sir. C squared equals A squared plus B squared, you'll get the distance right.
So what's 86 miles by horse courier in time? 2 days?
Yeah. Not 1 day. They can't, this isn't the Pony Express.
One more, Gary.
Yeah.
You mentioned Potato Hill. Do you know approximately where that's located at?
Yeah, it's you'll see it's where Abrams Creek runs across Route 11 today. That high, if you're riding into Winchester, it's the high ground right around it.
I'll show him on the way up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. By the way, Abrams Creek is short for Abraham's Creek, and that's named for Abraham Hollingsworth, who Abrams Delight. That's all named after him. By the way, I'm a direct descendant of his sister, so a little bit of Quaker ancestry in me too. So, all right. Any other questions? Let's go to the hill.